Let's take a look at this function question. It's a pretty long question with a total of 4 parts, and the total marks allocated is 11 marks. Let's start off with first part of this question, which requires us to show that the function f has an inverse. So in order to show a function it has an inverse means it must be a one-to-one function, and we are going to use the horizontal line test. Let me just write down the expression first. We have fx is equal to a ln bracket x plus 1 square plus 2, and the domain is given to us to be x greater or equal to 0. We're going to sketch out this graph using our GC. I've already keyed in the equation already, and when we graph it, it will look like this. So we were just going to sketch this out at the side here. We have a graph that looks something like this onwards. And for this part of this graph is not being required, but actually there will be a vertical asymptote which is at x equal to minus 1. But since the domain is defined to be greater or equal to 0 onwards, so we will just sketch this part of this graph, and that is enough already. And we're going to find the y-intercept. I'm going to press trace 0, and it will give us a value of a 0, 2 at this particular point. So this will be a 0, 2, and this is y equal to fx. And we can see that if we were to draw a horizontal line across this for the values of k, y equal to k, horizontal line, for the range of f, we can see that it will only cut the graph at only one point for every single value of x, which is greater or equal to 0. So therefore, it's actually a one-to-one function, and therefore the inverse function will exist. I'm going to write down the presentation like this. Since a horizontal line y equal to k, where k belongs to the range of f, cuts the graph at only one point, the function of my f is a one-to-one, and this will imply the f inverse will exist. This will be the first part of this question, and part 2 of this question requires us to find the expression for my inverse function and also code the domain of it. So for inverse function, we're going to just let our y to be equal to ln bracket x plus 1 square plus 2. We are just going to express x in terms of y. Maybe we can just do a bit of simplification first by shifting down the 2 using the properties of this logarithm. And I'm going to shift this minus 2 and divide by 2 across. So we have a y minus 2 divided by 2 equal to ln bracket x plus 1. And expressing x in terms of the rest, I will get a e to the power of y minus 2 over 2 minus 1. So this will be the expression for my f inverse. I'm going to write down the expression first. So my f inverse x will just be equal to replacing all the y with x. So we have a e to the power of x minus 2 over 2 minus 1. As for the domain of f inverse, we will just be basically the range of the original function. So you can see that the range of this one will just be from 2 onwards. So for domain of my f inverse will just be inclusive of 2 and all the way to infinity. That will be the part 2 of this question. And the next part of this question, we are given another function g is defined to be 1 minus x over x plus 1. Maybe I'll just write it down here. So we have g 1 minus x over of x plus 1. In this case, the domain will be every single values of x, except for x cannot be equal to minus 1. And we will know that actually y it cannot be x equal to minus 1 because this will actually cause y to be undefined. Actually, this x equal to minus 1 will be the vertical asymptote. Right, so for part 3 of this question, we are given that our G inverse exists already, and we are supposed to show that G inverse F inverse exists. And find the range of G inverse F inverse. We are going to write down the criteria for G inverse F inverse to exist first. For G inverse F inverse to exist, The requirement is the range of my F inverse will be a subset of my domain of F inverse. For G inverse, F inverse, we are dealing with a composite function. So the starting function actually is my G inverse. And since the G inverse is being put into the F inverse is being put into the G inverse, the output of all the F inverse, right, which is the range, must be able to be going to the input of my G inverse, right? So that's why we have this particular criteria here. And in order to write down the range of each of this, we are going to refer to our graph. And for this case, I think probably it will be a good idea now if we were to sketch out the graph of Gx also, since we will be doing quite frequent references to it. So we are going to take a bit of time to invest in drawing the graph first, which I already did. I've keyed inside my calculator already. And I'm going to just uncheck this so it will not be graphing this out. I'm going to check this. So the graph will look something like this. And if we want to get a more accurate graph of this one, we are just going to do a bit of long division for this equation here at the side. So maybe I'll just do a quick long division. This is minus x plus 1. This is x plus 1. I'm going to put minus 1 here. We have minus x minus 1 minus of this one, I'll end up with 2. So therefore, I can rewrite this expression to be a minus 1 plus 2 over x plus 1. So I know that there is a horizontal asymptote at y equal to minus 1, and there is a vertical asymptote at x equal to minus 1. I'm going to sketch it here. So this will be my graph of my gx, x, y. So this will be my vertical asymptote x equal to minus 1, horizontal asymptote at y equal to minus 1 also. So when x equal to 0, I'm going to find where that the curve cuts the y-axis. It will be somewhere here. And when y equal to 0, x equal to 1. So I know the graph will probably look something like this, here and here. This point will be 1, 0, and this point will be 0, 1. So with this, right, actually we can write down what will be the range of my F inverse and my domain of my G inverse. So the range of my F inverse actually follows the domain of F. Let me just write down here, range of F inverse follow the domain of F, which we already have, which is from 0 all the way to infinity. As for my domain of G inverse, follow the range of my G, which is from this graph here. So domain of G inverse is equal to range of G. And we can see that the range, in fact, it will be every single value except for y equal to minus 1. So I can write from minus infinity to minus 1 union with minus 1 to infinity. Although you can also write something like this also fine, which is all real, excluding minus 1. So we can see that since this value actually is fully contained within this, you can see that this one can be squeezed within this range here. Maybe I can just write it nicer in this way, range of F inverse, subset of domain of G inverse. At the side, I write down what will be this value, which is 0 to infinity, and this value is minus infinity, minus 1, union with minus 1 to infinity. So therefore, our G inverse F inverse exists. All right, and the question also wants us to find the range of G inverse F inverse. And to find the range of this, right, it's not really required to find the composite function of G inverse F inverse. So in fact, we can make use of the mapping method, whereby by understanding what does this composite function means, it means that the output of this one will be fed into the input of this one. So what we need to do is we are going to take the range of F inverse. So range of F inverse actually is from 0 to infinity, to paste it onto the graph of G inverse on the x-axis. Then from there, we will observe what will be the range that it takes. That will be the range of the composite function. So for this case, probably we at least need to find out what will be the expression of G inverse so that we can sketch out the graph. Okay, I'm going to write it here. So for my G inverse, I'm going to let y be equal to 1 minus x over x plus 1. I'm going to cross multiply. I'll get xy plus y equal to 1 minus x. xy plus x is equal to 1 minus y, and our x will be equal to bracket y plus 1 equal to 1 minus y, and making x a subject, I end up with 1 minus y over y plus 1. And the thing is good because, right, I can see that the equation for my G inverse, right, is in fact the same as my original G. It's just 1 minus x over x plus 1. And furthermore, for the domain of G inverse, it follows the range of the original one. So the range of the original one we can see is actually everything except for y equal to minus 1, which actually exactly synchronizes with our function of G. So for this case, it will be x all real, and x is not equal to minus 1. So in fact, actually, this function is called a self-inverse, whereby not only the expression is the same, even the domain also the same. So they are exactly the same. So we can actually make use of this graph. So in this case, to find the range of this G inverse, F inverse, the output of my F inverse, which is the domain of F, which is from here, 0 to infinity, I'm going to paste this into the x-axis for my G inverse graph. Because this one, it can be either the G inverse graph or my G graph. So I can write something like this, or G inverse graph. So now, assuming that this is a G inverse graph, I'm going to paste this here, which is from 0 all the way to infinity. And we can see that the output that it produces will be from here, this point, all the way down. And therefore, I can actually write down the range of my composite function already, which is just from this point all the way to this point. So therefore, my range of my G inverse, F inverse will just be from minus 1 exclusive all the way to 1, which is inclusive. So this will be the answer for my part 3 of this question. Let me just write down part 3 here. Okay, actually it's here already. All right, and lastly, right, we also need to find the exact value of x such that G inverse F inverse is equal to half. For this part of this question, we are just going to solve it directly. We have G inverse F inverse x is equal to half. We can make use of this theorem whereby we know that FF inverse will be equal to x, or my F inverse F is also equal to x. So like for this case, we can actually kind of like put G on both sides by subbing the left hand side into my G expression. Then right hand side, we also sub half into my G expression like this. So when you see a G and a G inverse side by side, it will just like become a x. So this x will be fed into the function of F inverse, right? So somehow it's just like kind of gone. But there's another faster way of seeing it. That is what you learned in your secondary school before. Last time in our secondary school, let's say we have a sign x is equal to half. So what do we do here? Actually, we are going to do an inverse. So we have a x equal to sine inverse half. And if you want to do from here to this step here, we do something like an uninverse. So we put the sine inverse also to the left hand side. In fact, actually, we are doing this thing, but actually we can just ignore this, and we can just like do the inverse and uninverse directly. So like this case, we can do this, we can do it very fast. So like for example, here, we are just going to like uninverse this. So we're going to like throw it over to the right hand side. So end up with F inverse x is equal to G half. Same thing here, if we want to get rid of this one, we can like throw it over to the right hand side again. So we have x is equal to F G half. So this is the value of x that we need to find. So basically, we just need to evaluate this. And for the function of g, we have already, which is this. We can just sub our half into this. So we have 1 minus half over half plus 1. So this one, if we were to evaluate this, our value I will get is f 1/3. And finally, we just need to put 1/3 into my function of f. So I have a ln bracket 1/3 plus 1 square plus 2. This one will end up with 4 over 3 square. I will get a ln 16 over 9 plus 2. Right, so this will be the answer required for my part 4.